So today on the podcast, we have Lance Stroll, 23-year-old Canadian Formula One driver racing for Aston Martin. If you guys know anyone who might enjoy this podcast, send it their way. Enjoy. I appreciate you coming on, spending the time. And dude, we have to get out riding in Revy for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's heaven over there, man. For sure. Next season.
Did you switch to snowboarding? I saw some snowboarding clips this year.
I did, man. I did. I got into it. I was always a skier my whole life. I was, I grew up on skis. And then like last season, just like some friends of mine, they've been bugging me for like a couple of years, just like, you got to get on a board, man. And like, I always did a bit of surfing and, and I did a bit of snowboarding when I was younger, but like in deep powder, everyone kept saying like, you got to get on a snowboard. It's just like a whole other thing. And then like, and I eventually gave in. I was like, fine, you know what? I'll get on a board for fun, whatever. And man, I never turned back. It's just been snowboarding for the last 2 seasons now. So I'll get back on skis at some point, but I definitely got the board bug now.
Yeah, dude, I hear you. I'm the same thing. Grew up skiing, like pretty good skier like yourself. But what I do is, because we sled ski, I wear snowboard boots on the snowmobile and have my boots in the back. And so I do 2 runs every day, the first and the last run on the snowboard, and then I ski during the day.
Amazing. It's great on the sled, like out there, man. So you get in like, 8, 9 sick runs every day. And I mean, you can just get into like tons of spots that, no one can, like, you just can't get access to with helis or, like touring or whatever. Just like some of the best spots are on sleds out there.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Like you just go and you're like, hey, yeah, we're going to go lap that all day. I like the looks of that. Scoot over here. And like,
but you got to be good on a sled.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man.
That's the thing. I get stuck much more than I end up riding. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the problem.
I stick to racing cars.
Exactly. So to jump in, man, I'll be frank with you. I don't watch every single race. Like I'll watch the highlights and stuff, but I was just flying the last 2 days, and so I had a bunch of time in the airport. So I was binge watching Drive to Survive to catch up.
Oh, nice. Where did you end up? Like, have you finished the whole thing, the whole season?
No, I'm halfway through, or I'm probably like 3 episodes into the final season.
Okay.
Okay. So I've seen a lot now. But what are your thoughts on the whole deal, on the Netflix effect and Drive to Survive?
Well, man, you know what? I think it's been great for the sport. I think it's just shown a lot of people that never watched F1, kind of what it's all about, like, especially behind the scenes and stuff. I think it's just like it's introduced, a lot of people to F1, and just even a lot of friends of mine, for example, that like, were never really into it, never watched F1. They started watching the series, and now like they're hooked on it and they're watching every race, because I think it's just given fans insight on what happens kind of in a team, like behind the scenes. I think a lot of people turn on the race and they watch the race, but with the series, I think it's shown people a lot about what goes on behind the scenes, in the whole F1 world. And, they definitely spice it up a bit and make it, I think a little bit more dramatic in some ways than it is. But, it's been a huge success, and it's definitely, turned a lot of people onto F1.
No, absolutely. Do you get, outside of motorsports fans, like obviously you guys are like gods to people, but outside of that, in pop culture, there's really only a few guys that have that star status. But now that everyone has seen Drive to Survive, do you get like recognized a whole ton more and hit up on social media a lot more?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's, it's brought a lot of attention to our sport, and, even just like teenage girls and stuff, that never watched F1 before. Now, like, I always, I see people like, in the street and stuff, like, oh, I saw the show, and, like keep it up, like keep doing what you're doing, just like people that never watched F1 before, that were never into it, and especially like a much younger audience. I think for a long time, Formula One has been like a very not only an old audience, but an older audience. And I think with the Netflix show, it's brought in like a much younger crowd, and just people that watch Netflix at night. I think they just turn on the show and got into it, and now it's definitely become a lot more popular. It's been huge for the sport.
No, for sure. I knew it was something big when I'd go to, a party with everyone from my hometown, and some girl from high school would say, "Hey, did you catch second practice yesterday?" Like, that was crazy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? I didn't even know you were a race fan. But,
No, I met someone. It's funny you say that. I met someone the other day, like a couple of weeks ago, coming back from Miami, and it was a girl, a friend through a friend of mine, and she just knew everything about F1. It was like, it was insane. She's like, "Oh, what do you think about what happened at the last race of the year last year?" And, like, "Oh, what happened to the, I saw the Drive to Survive, these tires, the Pirellis, they have like, a lot of degradation." It's like getting really technical and stuff. I was like, "How do you know all this?" Like the Netflix series. And I was shocked. Like, it's definitely, it's been great for Formula One, and it's turned a lot of people onto it for sure.
No, that's good. That's good. So, I don't know if you watched any of the other interviews I've got. Like, I had Fellows on and Morad on, and other guys you'd know. But I always ask, like, what initially got you into racing or karting? And in most cases, it's your dad. Was that the case with you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I saw your message there from a few weeks ago, and then I saw you were interviewing like Daniel and a few guys that I grew up racing with. So I thought it'd be really fun to jump on and chat about some racing, old memories and stuff, which has been it's been some of the most incredible times of my career racing back in Canada. I mean, what got me into it, like for sure, my dad, he was always very passionate about cars and racing. He did like some racing himself. Back in the day, he like did it just as a hobby for fun. Racing GT cars and just for fun. And we have the track up in Tremblant. So I spent a lot of time growing up, going to the racetrack, and I got a go-kart for my 5th birthday. And starting at that age, I just, in the summers, like, we go up north, and I just drive in the parking lot at the track and, around cones and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I was just always very, I was just always an adrenaline junkie. I love speed, and I was always very competitive growing up as a kid, but in many different kinds of sports, hockey, whatever it would be, I was always into sports. And I mean, when I was 8 years old, that's when I started racing, Saint Hilaire and just around Montreal, and I did the Coupe de Montréal, and from there it kind of just took off, man.
Were you, like, looking back on it, because I think we had an overlap of karting for maybe a year or two, but from my recollection, like, you were dominant right out of the box. Is that the case? Did you pretty much, come out swinging?
Yeah, I mean, in Canada for sure, it was definitely, we had a lot of success racing in Canada and in Florida, and some great memories, racing around, Canada, the Coupe de Montréal, Coupe Quebec, Canadian Championship, and then the Florida Winter Tour. We'd, go there in the winter and race there for the winter. And it was definitely, we were competitive, but we had tough weekends too. Yeah. I mean, some weekends were rough and things didn't go right, and other guys were faster, and that's just racing. I mean, some weekends are great, and we definitely had a lot of amazing weekends, but some weekends were tough, and there was definitely a lot of talent, growing up in Canada racing against some of the guys over there. There was a lot of talent in, in
no, for sure,
Micro Max, Mini Max, and all that. And then you go to
Yeah.
Europe, and then you really see, like, how many guys are out there that are just, on a whole other level, just like so much talent.
Yeah, no, for sure. Were you, I always ask this question because like for my first like maybe like 3 years of karting, dude, if I didn't win, I would cry. Like I was so competitive. Were you super competitive in karting as well? Like it was winner last kind of thing?
Oh yeah, no, it was brutal. I mean, it was really rough, the days, that it didn't go well. And racing's an emotional roller coaster, man, especially in the early days. Like, I think when I first started, that's something that I definitely wasn't very good at, was controlling that emotional roller coaster. And I'd get super high on the good days, and the wins were everything. And then the days where it didn't go right, whatever, for whatever reason, a crash or a mistake, or whatever it was, those days were really low. And that's something I think that with time, with experience, racing that's just what it is. It's not always, you're not always winning. It's not always, perfect. And I think learning to kind of manage that and accept that, some weekends are great and others are, not as good. It's just part of what we do.
Oh, dude, yeah, there's probably nothing more humbling that I do. It's just a hammer to the ego, you crash out in the first corner or something, and it's just like, you can't get your identity wrapped up in being a winning race car driver because, man, winning doesn't happen all the time.
No, for sure. And I remember those times, man. It was like, you crash out in the first corner, and you only get over it by the time the next race weekend comes around. That whole week leading up to it is just misery.
Yeah.
And it's life in the mind of a racing driver.
No, for sure. Uh, the one memory I remember, you're at the 2009 Canadian Nationals at Goodwood.
Wow, man. Now you're really juggling my memory, man. 2009 Canadian National. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Mini Max. I remember. I ended up second. So that was a weekend, man. That was a weekend where I was furious, man. I'll never forget. I won every race that year. It was probably one of the most dominant seasons I had in karting. Everything was great. The chassis was great. The engine was great. And I had a great team around me, helping me that year. And that one race, Goodwood, I remember we got there from the beginning. It was tough. We were struggling. And we finished second, which was like a good result, because for the whole weekend we were running like fourth, fifth. It was really a rough weekend. But yeah, that was the one important. Well, that was the most important race, the Canadian Championship, and that one slipped away from us. But it was fun.
That one's super memorable for me because I won the senior Honda race and my brother won the junior Honda race. And for winning those, your dad, I think, awarded us a 3-day school at the Jim Russell deal up at Tremblant.
Yeah, I remember that was part of the Canadian Championship. Yeah.
It was like, and like I have to thank him. Like it was an amazing experience to go up there with all the fast guys and like just spend some time and drive a proper race car at 15 years old. And like that was an integral point in my career, getting that school. So
awesome,
it was cool.
Man. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I did a bit of Jim Russell at Tremblant. It's great fun, man. Like to like get into those cars and just like get behind the wheel of a car, for the first time. It's a lot of fun.
For sure. So what was your jump like to cars? Because a lot of guys feel really confident in their go-kart. They've won a whole ton of stuff. Were you nervous about the leap?
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole new world for me when I got to cars. I remember it being like a big transformation, and just like how to approach, everything, like driving, and working with the engineers. Like that was something, in go-karting. Well, so I'll bring it back really. I mean, for me, the big jump was when I went to Europe, like from Canadian karting, then going North America karting, I should say, winter tour and everything, then going to Europe and racing in WSK and the European Championships and World Championships and all that was that was a big jump. That was a big, like, you know, I think like a very humbling experience for me, because I came from Canada and every weekend, you know, fighting the top, you know, 2, 3, you know, on a bad weekend, finishing, you know, third. And then you go to Europe and, you know, everyone from all over the world that was winning in their own country then comes and meets in Europe. And you very easily like start to see, like, if you have a bad weekend, you're, you know, all of a sudden you're 15th, 20th. Yeah. And, you know, if you have a good weekend, you're up at the front. And I think that was a very humbling experience for me. But yeah, getting into cars, man, was a big transformation for sure. It was, you know, it was, I remember when I first started testing cars like Formula Renaults, and my first season was in Formula 4. And I did a lot of work. I had, you know, a lot of support. I was in the Ferrari Driver Academy at the time, and they were, you know, working with me and my team when I first got into cars, just how to kind of like learn how to drive cars and work with the engineers, like looking at data, which is something we had in karting, but it's just not really a part of like the culture in karting. You know, you kind of just speak to the mechanic and he tells you, you know, like, oh, like that guy is doing that corner a bit different. Try that line there. Maybe it's a bit different. Or like, you know, you tell him like, oh, let's, you know, change the sprocket, or, you know, the axle. Let's make it a bit softer, this and that. And it's, you know, it's a very different relationship with your team when you get into cars, because all of a sudden you have these engineers around you that, you know, spend a lot of time looking at data and setting up the car and all those things. So that was a big transformation. But on the driving side of things as well, like just, you know, I remember like when I first got into cars, I was like braking very, very late, and like Ving all the corners, like turning in quite early and then getting on the power late, just because in karting, like you kind of like turn and brake a lot and like throw the cart into the corner. And I think a big transformation to my driving in cars was like starting to like kind of carry a lot more speed through the corner, especially like, you know, when you get into well, I mean, I guess it's different which cars, but like when you start getting into cars with, you know, aerodynamics, it's amazing, like to see how much the aerodynamics gives you grip and you know, and kind of changing that driving style into cars from go-karts was definitely a big transformation. And, you know, I think it you know, karting is great for racing. It's great for racecraft. But for me, like when you get into cars, the whole driving style side of things and all that is just like completely different and a total like reset, really.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So that season of Formula 4, like you dominated. You won, what, 10 of 17 races. When was it kind of, you know, I guess you already saw this ladder. You were already in Europe. You're definitely taking racing seriously. But you smashed it there. Was it like, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Like I've got a shot at making a career out of this. Was that around the time, or was it later?
No, I was still late. I was more like Formula 3. You know, Formula 3, I started to think about like Formula 1 and like really, you know, like going professional and, you know, making this something that, you know, I was going to do for, you know, a career or whatever, however you want to look at it. Formula 4, I think, was still like, you know, serious, but fun. I mean, it's still, you know, it's just the beginning of racing in cars. And, you know, it was definitely a great season. We, you know, we dominated. And yeah, I mean, I was, you know, I was really comfortable driving that car and had a great feel in that car. And it was an incredible learning experience. Like for me, like I said earlier, just kind of, you know, getting like just learning how to drive like formula cars compared to go-karts that first season. It was just a year of like gaining knowledge and like learning my craft of how to drive cars and adapting from go-karts, which is like, you know, it's completely different. You know, I really like, I really mean it. Like, you know, when you come from karts and get into, you know, into cars, it's, other than the racecraft, it's all new. Like just how to, you know, how to brake, how to turn, how to, rotate the car, all those things. It's a completely different, it's a completely different thing when you get into cars, and just like doing that, learning that, and in my first season of car racing, that was the biggest thing. And yeah, we had an amazing year. It was awesome.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, you guys really did well. And then your first year, Formula 3, you ended up fifth. Is that right, in the championship?
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
running against a bunch of guys who are you're racing against now, like a pretty stout field.
yeah. It was a very competitive year. We had it's like 4 or 5 guys that are in F1 now. We're racing that season. I think Russell was in there, Albon was in there, Giovinazzi, he's not around anymore, but he was in there. Leclerc was in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very competitive season. And then it was there was a lot of cars. I think we were like 35 cars in the field that year. But
Wow.
that was a rough season though. Like it was we had a good start, and then it was like, it was it was a bumpy road for a while. Like we had some rough races. Like I was leading the race and I made some mistakes leading. I think it was in Spa, one of the races. I was leading and we were 3 wide, and I ended up like closing the door and we crashed. And yeah, there was some lows, some highs and lows that first season of F3, but I definitely learned a lot about my racecraft and and like just I always had the speed in that first season. I was very fast, but it was so competitive. And I definitely it took me a while to kind of get used to the strength of field, but also just I knew like I could win races, but it wasn't so easy to win. And I often like I was getting like a bit impatient and trying too hard, and I made some mistakes because of that. And yeah, it was a tough season, but then at the end, the last like 5-6 races, we started to put it all together, and I learned from some of my mistakes earlier in the season. And we had a strong finish to the season, won some races, finished on the podium a few times. And and in the end, finished 5th in the championship, which is nice.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then again, the next year, like you dominated the season where you won the last 5 races of the championship. At that level, like, so it's so easy for outsiders to say, "Hey, look at Lance. He comes from a super wealthy family. Da 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 da." But when when you're so dominant at Formula 4, Formula 3, does that help dispel like a lot of that? Like, look, everyone there has money. They're racing in Europe. They're racing Formula 3, Formula 4. This kid is talented. Like, did those seasons really like put the nail in the coffin for, man, this kid deserves to be here?
Yeah, I mean, like there's always going to be those people saying those things. And to be honest, like I've always just tried to kind of like keep that like out of my ears, like just entirely, because I know that still to this day, like, when I have a good race or a good weekend, those people that have been there since day one will, lock their door, close their laptop, whatever, and not say anything and, disappear. And then, as soon as there's a rough day at the office, like those are the first people to jump online or whatever and, start saying whatever. And, that's why, like, for me, it's always been something that I've just kind of tried to block out. And, I stay in my little bubble. And, I know the people around me that have been with me, throughout this whole journey know, what's really going on, like behind closed doors. And, when we have a tough day, why did we have a tough day? And when it went well, why did it go well? It's easy to look at results in racing, and think and think like, oh, that was whatever, that guy he was terrible today, and that's not always the case. Sometimes, you're actually like really quick and you're fast, but things just go wrong, like, might get a red flag in qualifying and you miss your lap, or you might, just like, lock up and, abort a lap, and for that reason, like the result isn't good, but that wasn't necessarily a bad weekend is what I'm trying to say. So I think, a lot of people are judgmental, and they will, always be, but I definitely think those years were, I think, more than anything for my own self-confidence, they were important years. Like, when I started in Canada, North America, they were incredible years. I was winning races and championships, and I thought I was the best, and they were incredible years. And then I got to Europe, and I realized that there's now 100 kids in the field, and we call it KF3, which is like junior, and KF senior, and all these guys are the best in the world from their own countries, and it's a whole other level. And that really humbled me. And I think definitely some of those years, I won some races in Europe. I won some big races, and I was on the pole of the the World Championship in juniors. But a lot of things went wrong, and I didn't always get the results that I wanted. And I think that was like kind of a knock to my confidence a little bit. And just going over there and seeing like, how many kids are like really, really good. And when I came into F4 and F3, those were great years for my own self-confidence, and just like knowing that, I had a great team around me, and, and I definitely improved on some of my, like, just skills, like work, my work ethic at the track, and just how I would approach the weekends mentally. Like, I started to become a lot more process driven, like session by session, lap by lap, rather than like result driven, which like in karting, I was always like just trying to win. But that sometimes would take my eye off the ball of like everything I would have to do to try and get to Sunday and be in a position to win. And I think in cars, I really definitely improved on some of those things and my approach towards racing. And yeah, in F3, like, I just love to drive the cars. They were great cars to drive. And, I had a lot of confidence driving, those cars. My driving style was very good, with the way that the car, wanted to be driven. I was always very late on the brakes, and carrying a lot of minimum speed. And the tires in F3 are very hard. They're very hard, like compound tires, and they could accept a lot of sliding, and all those things like suited my driving style very well. So I could brake very deep, carry a lot of speed, slide the car, do all the things that I wanted. And that's kind of from the first to the second season of F3, I started to like push those limits further. And I think the first year I was kind of settling into F3, I was like kind of under driving, I think, what the car was capable of doing. And then when I got into that second season, I started to really push the limits and find, a good groove. And yeah, I mean, once you start winning races, it's just, that confidence builds and it starts to compound. And that was pretty much the 2016 season. It was like, we started off strong, and then like once we started flowing, it just kept on getting better. Yeah. Racing's fun when it's like that.
Oh yeah, dude. It's real good when you're winning.
You feel like Superman behind the wheel,
Yeah. So for the outsider or the layman, you make the jump to F1. How do you get a super license, and how do you make that jump? What are the requirements?
Yeah, so you got to win like series going up to F1. So I think depending on the series, so you got to get like a total of 40 points, 40 super license points they call it. So if you win like F4, for example, you get like 12 points. I think I might be wrong, but something like that, 10 or 12 points. And then like if you're second in F4, you get like, I don't know, 6 points. I'm making up a number right now. And then when you get to the like higher categories, that number goes up. So like F3, you get 40 points for winning F3. Okay. So you gotta, it basically just like, I think the system is to, keep the guys that don't deserve to be there, like from just like buying their way through the junior series and getting to F1. Like it makes like the guys that, you know, win deserve and earn their spot to get there. And I think it's great. You know, I think it's good to see the best guys that win the series leading up to F1 get to F1. You know, that's I think that's the idea behind it. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a great way to do it. I guess that's such a good barrier to entry. It's really based on performance. My next question is I mean, to get there, what do you think is more important? I mean, obviously to get to F1 you have to be talented. You have to collect those points. But what do you think is more important leading up to it? Being super well financially backed, or a guy like Mick or Jacques Villeneuve having that last name? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think you need everything, man. I think the truth is our sport is so expensive. You know, from go-karts, you know, like in Europe, like, you know, you know, just to even Canada as well. I mean, everywhere it's ridiculous, you know, what it costs to go racing now. And I think unless you're really fortunate to have like a sponsor or, you know, like a family member that helps you out financially, it's honestly like it's impossible to get there. I'm sure there's tons of talented, extremely talented people that could be in F1 that just never had the chance because, you know, they didn't have, you know, the family member, the sponsor that discovered them, that, you know, whatever. I mean, it just, the circumstance didn't work out, right? You know, I think it all the stars need to be aligned. And I think racing is probably an extreme example, but I think in all sports you kind of need, like, to an extent, a lucky break, you know. Like whether, you know, you're a tennis player or a, you know, I mean, a golfer, I don't know, like to go to the best school and go travel to all the tournaments and get the best coach. Like initially there needs to be some support, you know, and I'm, you know, the same, like, I don't know, hockey player, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of good hockey players that couldn't, you know, get the best equipment and go into a great team, into a great program to help them develop. Like, but I think racing, however, is the extreme example because, like, it is ridiculously expensive to go racing unless you, like I said, you have someone helping you out. So to answer your question, I think all the stars need to be aligned. I think you need to have talent because we've seen so many guys come through the, you know, the ranks with no talent and all the money in the world and finish nowhere. And I've raced against those guys, and I'm not going to name, like, I'm not going to say names, but I know who they are. And we've seen that. And, you know, but we've seen guys that are extremely talented that never had the chance to, you know, to get that drive and, you know, whatever it was, F3, F2, F1, you know, we've seen a lot of those guys too. And, you know, and I think you need the backing, you need the financial support, and you need the, you know, the connections, the talent, you know, you got to win the series. That's why another reason I think the super license points is great, because you can't just cheat your way into F1. You got to win the categories, you got to earn it. But then you see guys spending like 5-6 years in F2, you know, earning their super license points, which is ridiculous too. Cause like, I mean, you know, those guys have, after 5-6 years, you'll end up winning, or you end up finishing in the top 3, which is good enough to get you the super license points. So I think, like, you know, if you really see the guys that are, you know, that are good, that are competitive, you know, they in the first 2 years, like, they're up at the front and, you know, in a category, and then they're, you know, fighting for wins in the second season. And, you know, I think, like, that's, you know, that's how it should be. Like, you know, spending 5-6 years doing Formula 2 to try and get super license points, I don't think is right either. Like, you know, I think there needs to be a limit to that.
No, I get that for sure. I was chatting with Daniel. I actually bought his old sim, and I just built a sim in the basement for my dad, and I've started running more and more laps on it. And, like, for me, it was like there's such a correlation for my performance on the track to how much I'm on the sim.
Really?
For you, yeah, and I maybe you're not maybe you're desensitized to it because you've probably been on the sim for so long. What is your sim setup like? Like, I'm assuming there's one at the race shop there that you're, like, can you paint a picture for the guy who just has a little steering wheel in his basement, like how badass your setup is?
Yeah, it's a little bit more complex than that. I guess you could say it's it's pretty it's a pretty fancy setup. I mean, now Formula One teams are spending so much money on simulators because we can't like go out and test, right? Like that's now a regulation in F1. So we only have like 6 days of testing before the season starts, and then it's just racing. So over the last like 10 years, 15 years since testing has stopped, teams have started spending a lot of money in simulation to develop simulators, to develop the cars. And, now we can really like try the setup on the simulator. And, it's really 90% of the time it's good enough where we know that setup on the simulator is going to work on the track. So we do, 2-3 days of simulator leading up to the race and get a much better idea of how we have to set up the car. Also, like just, from a driving side of things, like just getting into a groove with the track. And now all the tracks are laser scanned to perfection. So really have an idea of, the bumps in the track and the layout and all those things, which is, it's crazy to think that we can do that, on simulators now. But yeah, it's pretty cool, the setup we have back at the factory. It's a simulator up on a motion platform. So we have the chassis up on a motion platform, and with roll and like longitudinal braking, there's motion. So you get longitudinal motion under braking, and you get like lateral roll. You don't get yaw, but you get roll motion. So that gives us like kind of an idea, like feeling the car. But you don't feel everything, because that's the next step is yaw. Like that's a really important sensation when you're behind the wheel of a race car. And we don't get that. So there's some things you're limited by with the motion platform, which separates simulation from reality. But there's still like a lot of good things going on now in the simulators that, it's just come such a long way, and I'm sure it's only going to keep getting better. And we got a big screen in front of us, like 180 kind of degree wraparound thing, which is which is amazing. I mean, it gives us like a really good view of everything. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy where technology has come in the last 10 years, but it's still very different, driving a simulator and driving a race car. It's still, there's still a difference, like going 300 kilometers an hour between the walls in Monaco, doing it on the simulator and doing it in the real thing. There's still something in your brain that tells you it's a little different.
No doubt.
I guess you could still say that,
Yeah.
But
Do you guys like, I'm sure you have sim sessions, like how on average, you don't have to give it away, how many hours a week do you spend on the sim?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mind answering that. I often I'm either in there like once a week before the race. And if there's stuff like we want to develop on the sim, because that's also like a separate kind of thing that's always going on, is like developing the sim and making it better. Sometimes I come in twice a week. So I was like do a day of development to help out the guys, and the tire model is always changing, and there's always like different motion settings and options that are like being worked on and developed. So sometimes I go in for a day of that, and then generally like just like a day to kind of prepare pre-event on a Tuesday or Wednesday before flying out to the race.
Does every I assume you have a sports psychologist. Does every driver have like a driving coach and a sports psychologist that they travel with?
That's,
or just your case?
That's a really good question, actually. I did work with someone over the years, but to be honest, man, I think a lot of people, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the guys, I don't know like personally how many guys do have sports psychologists or don't. And I think some guys, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Some guys I think find it very helpful. personally, I think that it's, it comes down to, in a way, like believing in yourself. Like if, in racing, I think, it's like I was saying earlier, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster. And I think, having someone for those things can be really helpful because, the tough weekends are tough and, vice versa. But I think like going racing, if you get like a good feeling with the car and, and the car is giving you confidence and, you find like a good balance, behind the wheel. And then at the end of the day, like you got to just like believe in yourself to, to go out there and do the job. And I found like the more that I, focus on that rather than like relying on someone to kind of help me do that, I've actually like become a better driver because like I, start to drive and believe in my ability. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like some weekends you do everything that you think should be right, but it goes wrong. And that's like with the way you set up the car, with the way you drive the car, how you take a corner, da 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 da. But sometimes like that works. And I think having like, for me, looking at the best drivers in the world, it's the guys that, regardless of whether like they have a bad weekend, they have a good weekend, like that mindset, that approach to like always believe in yourself and commit to like, the weekend and, setting up the car the way you want, drive the car the way you want, be your own artist on the track, like never doubt how, if you're doing it right or wrong. Like the guys with that mentality, with that approach, I think are those are the most successful guys. And for that, I think it's so important to, at the end of the day, aside from like sports psychology, and again, I think, it is helpful for some, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think you gotta be disciplined enough to kind of, I think, have your own way of doing it and just believing in yourself, which isn't easy to do because it, a lot of time it's very result driven. Sometimes you do really well for like, a month or two and, that confidence goes up and then you start to trust what you're doing. Everything you're doing is working and, it's all going well and vice versa. But I think, it's those days where, those times where it's maybe not going perfectly, you got to just keep believing in yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, confident, you have to know that you have the ability to win and that, you can't, maybe you can go doubt your decisions on Monday, but it shouldn't be on Saturday and Sunday. That's for sure. Yeah. How much pressure, because I assume you guys have so much telemetry that, for the average kind of Saturday night stock car guy listening to this, he feels like because I can relate, he feels so much pressure from his crew chief to help set up the car. How much pressure do your engineers put on you to make changes like every session? Or are they or do they already know by how much data they're looking at?
Well, so there's like a lot of things that go on, like aside from like the driver's input, like just that, set ride heights and, yeah, I mean, camber, on the front, the rear, which is just stuff that they do looking at, the data and analyzing aerodynamics. It's better to run the car at 90 mil instead of 100, whatever it might be. So we don't have a lot of input in those decisions. And that's like, there's a lot of things like that going on, over the weekend. The main thing we're kind of like working on with the engineers with setup is front wing, mechanical balance. So stiffer rear bar, softer rear anti-roll bar. That changes the balance of the car in low speed a lot. You want more rotation. You generally you put a stiffer rear anti-roll bar. You want, like more support on the rear. You put a softer rear anti-roll bar. You want more front end in a high speed corner. You put more front wing on the car. So you have more oversteer, vice versa. You want too much rear instability. You take off the front wing. Rear cambers, you want more support. So just, there's a lot of stuff going on for sure. But there's, at the end of the day, I mean, it's pretty simplified in that sense. Like there's 2 or 3 things that we kind of speak about, but like me and my engineer, about how we have to set up the car and, and sometimes, sometimes you put the car on the track and these are the best weekends, like from FP1, the first session, the car is just working perfectly and it's doing everything you want. And like from FP1 till the race, like you maybe only change like one or two little things because it's just like it's working, it's working fine, it's working perfectly. But then there's some weekends where you put it at FP1 and like you're changing the mechanical balance like, crazy, and the front wing, like, it's all wrong. And then those are the more difficult weekends, because whilst you're trying to set up the car and change the balance of the car to your liking, you're also trying to like get into a groove, into a rhythm yourself as a driver. So those are definitely the easiest weekends. Like when you put the car on the ground, it goes well, it runs smoothly, and then from there you can just like kind of build on your driving, get into a groove, get into a rhythm leading up to qualifying in the race. Those are the nice weekends.
Oh man, yeah. There's nothing better than the car being fast out of the box. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, man, Formula One now, it's like it's crazy. There's so many engineers, and it's definitely it's a team, man. It's all teamwork. Everyone. If we don't all do our jobs to the best of our abilities, then it doesn't go well normally. I mean, that's all it takes is one guy that just makes a little mistake, and we're a team in that sense. Like I think a lot of people watch the sport and they think it's in like individual sport. You're driving the car, it's like just you out there, and
like tennis or badminton.
Yeah, exactly. And and I don't think people realize how much of a team sport it is, because I think it's probably more of a team sport than like any team sport in the world. Like, there's 500-600 people back at the factory that, devote, I mean, every day of every week to making the car go faster. And I don't think a lot of people always realize that when they turn on the TV and watch F1.
It's such a badge of honor in NASCAR. Like, it's not cheating if you don't get caught, and working in that gray area. Do you think as much? Well, let me ask you this. Do you think, is it the same attitude in the F1 paddock amongst the teams, that it's not cheating if you don't get caught, that they're really working in that gray area?
I think everyone's always pushing the limits. That's for sure. I mean, if you're not getting caught, you could argue it's not cheating, but I think in F1 there's some very, very good, the FIA are very on it with that stuff. Whereas like if you cheat, I mean, they're gonna catch you and you're gonna get either completely disqualified from the championship or fined, crazy amounts of money. And it's just a risk that I think most teams aren't willing to take. I mean, if you do get caught, the consequence is huge, right? So in karting, it's a different story though. In Europe and stuff, like, I mean, there's always little things going on. Like, there's just so much you can do, like, with engines and carburetors, and I mean, there's just so many little things. But yeah, that's a whole different ball game.
Do you think there's still spies in different teams right now, like this year?
For sure, there has to be. To be. I'm sure there's always like people leaking stuff here and there. It's such a, I mean, it's a small community.
Yeah,
it's a small community. But I like, even on from like driving as well. I mean, it's, I was speaking with someone about this actually, like a little while ago, and saying like, there's drivers that are very clean, and then there's drivers that like are always on that edge of being like too aggressive and like dirty and borderline, like just like, you can't do that, it's wrong. And like, where do you draw that line, as a driver? And I think that's a an interesting topic, because I can speak for myself. Like at times, I've been like really soft on the track and, got pushed around and finished like 7th instead of finishing 2nd. I'm making, up an example. And that was because I was like the gentleman on the track, and I was really nice and I was soft and all that. And other times, like a good example, I remember like Monza last year, I had, had a bad start. I lost like 2 positions, and then there was like a spin in front of me, and I remember who it was, like one of the Ferraris, or and I saw like a couple guys hesitate, so I went really really late on the brakes into this second chicane, and I missed the corner a little bit. I locked up, but there was 3 guys in front of me, or 2 guys that were spinning and going off the track, so it was all kind of a mess, and I ended up like cutting the chicane a bit, and I didn't gain an advantage, but I didn't lose an advantage. And then, but it put me in a better place for the following corner because I was on the inside. But I should have lost the place because I was on the outside and I missed the braking zone, and I ran deep. And in theory, I should have if I would have just not missed the corner, I would have ended up just losing the place of the guy. But there was a lot of stuff happening in front, so I cut the chicane. I was on the inside for the next corner, but I was still kind of behind. And then I dived down the inside for the next corner. I pushed the guy a bit wide. And then I ended up having a great race and like finishing 7th,
Yep.
And I think to myself, I didn't get caught because there was things going on in front of me, and probably the stewards were looking at other incidents and whatever. But it wasn't right what I did, because I cut the corner and I then pushed the guy off a little bit because I dived, and I was kind of a little bit far back to dive, but I benefited from the whole situation, and I finished 7th in the race, when it probably, if I would have just been the nice guy and pulled back in the chicane and not done anything, and I would have finished out of the points,
Yeah.
And that's my point, where it's like, I think it's always important to, push the limits, but at the same time, like, you always gotta be, and that's from the like you say, you come back, like, is it cheating if you don't get caught? Like, I think that's where the teams are always pushing, in that gray zone, like, to the limit. But I think as a driver, you also have to as well, because if you're just like the nicest guy, and you don't, you're not unfair in any way whatsoever, and what you do is never controversial, you always get pushed around. And I think karting, like in Canada, it's very, very clean. Like, there's no like blocking, there's no pushing. And I think that's great. Like, I think it's how it should be. But then you get to Europe, and you do that in Europe, and you just get smashed. Everyone is just like fucking pushing everyone off. And like, I mean, it's a free for all,
Yeah.
And that actually was a big transformation. Now it brings me back to when we were speaking earlier about like going from Canada to Europe. That was one of the biggest things I had to get used to, was just the aggression. Like, these kids in Italy and England, they grow up like, just like, everyone is just like dive bombing everyone and pushing everyone off. And, it's just a part of the culture. And I remember in 2012, I was on pole. I won all the heats. There was 5 heats. I won all the heats. I won the pre-final. I finished 3rd, sorry, in the pre-final, because I wanted to. I could have won, but I finished 3rd on purpose. It was a better run into the first corner. And then I got pushed off in the final. This was a World Championship 2012 in KF3. And, that's just how it is over there. Like, you just everyone is pushing everyone off. And, it's a very different, it's a very different, culture.
It's a fine line between, knocking the nose off every weekend and then being the guy who, always plays by the rules and, finishes outside the points, like you said. I'm assuming I know the answer because you don't have a sports psychologist. Do you have like a ritual, or do you meditate ever during the race weekend to kind of get in the zone before, say, qualifying, when you have to do that bonsai lap?
No, it's a good question. I don't really, to be honest. No. I'm someone that I like to be quite, like, I think sometimes meditation, like especially with racing, like what we do, I'm sure it's similar in other sports too, but it's hard to perfect it, because like, I'm speaking for myself, but I think, like, grip levels are always changing, conditions are always changing. Sometimes it's, windy or dry or wet, or, conditions are, certain situations always changing, that it's, it's difficult to meditate and visualize like what you have to do in the car, like anticipate what you have to do before you actually get in the car, in my opinion.
Yep.
And that's like something I did for a long time. Like I always kind of like sat for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before getting in the car and closed my eyes and visualized. And that was all things like, those are all things like people kind of taught
It's
me and
expected of
like
you.
pushed me
Yeah.
to do. Exactly. Because
Yeah.
it's like, that's what athletes do,
Yeah.
they warm up physically and then they prepare mentally and they get, and in the last like couple of years, I found that actually just getting in the car and being free and being happy and just accepting that, like, it could go well, it could not, but I'm going to be completely present and take it one corner at a time and connect myself to the grip level, to the surface, to whatever's happening while I'm in the car for the next hour and a half. And we'll see how it goes. Like I found that approach is actually like much better for me because I'm not anticipating what's happening. I think a lot of people drive like very, digitally, like they brake at this point and they turn at that point, and but I think to really be a great driver, you have to be very present and kind of accept the unexpected, or accept that there's always kind of an unexpected element of, like, when you get in a car, you never know where the grip level is going to be. You never know how the balance of the car is going to be. You never, it's always changing. It's always variable. And that's why I think meditation and all that, for some, maybe it's great. Every driver drives the different part of their brain, their body.
Yeah.
That's another thing as well. I'm very, I like to be free when I drive. I like to get in the car and, like I said, just adapt to the grip level and the balance and what the car is giving me every time I get in. And when I do that, when I stick to that mindset, I'm a better racing driver. But others like to look into data and videos and lines and every single, thing that they can kind of grab onto and soak up as knowledge is helpful. And that's not wrong either. I guess, it's a different approach. It's driving in a different way. And, we see that everyone is unique in their own way. But for me personally, getting into the car, being free, being happy, adapting to the grip level, enjoying it, like just accepting that, the grip's going to be where it's going to be, the balance is going to be how it's going to be. And, I'm going to drive to the limit of that. I find that that's my best approach in the car.
Man, I think that was, for probably a hardcore meditator, that was probably a perfect answer. That's probably like pure meditation, what you actually do in the car.
To all the meditators out there, it's like, it's no disrespect. It's, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just
no. But I mean, what I mean is like what your answer was is probably like what meditation actually is just being fully accepting of what is, being fully accepting of, how the car feels, the grip level, all that stuff. It's
very much like skiing in a sense, like I think it's, when you're in, virgin terrain and you're in deep powder and, you can never anticipate or think about like where you're going or how your line is going to go, because I think my best skiing is when I'm just kind of free and present, and one kind of turn leads me into the next, and when it's done, I'm at the, the bottom of the hill or whatever, however you want to look at it. That's just my thing.
Man, 100%. And that's like my two loves in life are racing and skiing fast through the trees in the powder. And
I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah. And it puts me in that
What
zone.
more do you need?
Yeah. Exactly. No, it's true. Exactly. That's it. Because it's a forced meditation. Like, you've got no choice but to focus, or otherwise you're going to smash a tree or hit the wall. Those qualifying laps, like that lap in the rain where you stuck it on the pole, like that must give you that feeling that you're looking for. Is that kind of peak experience for you? Something like that?
If you look at the result, you would think it's like peak experience, like perfect Lance in the best place, doing the best, he could possibly do. But
yeah,
as actually, like, as a matter of fact, it was just a very good lap in a competitive car that year, much more competitive car that I had in 2020, which I didn't really have in other years.
Sure.
And everything was really perfect that day. The conditions were terrible. It was the most slippery track surface we ever went to, because they repaved it a month before the race because it was COVID and we weren't supposed to go there, and they ended up repaving it and the surface didn't settle. So the surface was like a skating rink. It was super slippery, and then it started raining. And I definitely enjoy the wet. It's something that I've always enjoyed, karting in the wet, and and racing cars in the wet. I've always enjoyed driving in the wet. But that day it was actually just down to the fact that we got the tire pressures right. So we cranked them up super high. And that gave us it really allowed us to switch on the tires really well when the others couldn't do that, because they were just sliding around and their pressures were lower than ours, and we were able to just get out of the pits and in one lap switch on the tires, and the other guys were going around for 4 laps trying to switch on their tires. So it was a combination of that really good setup from the car, and a car that was working well that season, and then found them executing a good lap myself.
Yep.
And those 3 things gave us pole position that day. But I can tell you,
so it wasn't that feeling.
I can tell you many times that we've done and it's a negative way. It's I don't want to sound negative here, but I can tell you, Formula One is very dependent on, you can do a good job in a bad car and all those things, but it is very dependent on the car. And that year we had a car that was always capable of fighting in top 5, top 3, occasionally even for wins. I mean, that season we were probably in a position to win a race 3 times.
Yeah.
But I can tell you seasons that we were in the 7th, 8th fastest car, and all the same things happened. It was a perfect session. We executed, but you're 15th.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the whole world doesn't even know, acknowledge your existence,
Yeah.
And to be honest, that day was extremely special because the result was special.
Yeah.
But the actual process of getting to that result wasn't I don't consider that even one of the most incredible performances as a team, myself as a team. I mean, it was just as circumstances, it was all perfect. The car was going well, the tire pressures were right, we were on the right tire at the end of qualifying, and because of all those things, it all the stars aligned, and it was a great result.
Yeah. No, I was yeah, that's funny you say that. I understand. Have you ever had, because I've had it before, and I've had an out of body experience twice in my life. Have you ever had an experience like that in the race car where you're just you're so in the zone that you kind of leave yourself a little bit?
Yeah, no, for sure. I've definitely had that. I had that actually in Baku. That's one memory that just springs to mind. The year I finished on the podium in Baku, I was it was such a crazy race. And with 25 laps to go, I was in second, and Ricardo was leading the race, and I had a 20-second gap to the 2 Mercs, and I think it was Vettel in the Ferrari, and they were 1 second a lap quicker, and there was 22 laps to go. So it was gonna come down to the wire, to finish on the podium. But I remember just feeling so good in the car that weekend, man. The car was just so good on the brakes. I always brake. Nothing would never lock up. It was just I just had a great balance. And, I would turn, and I just had the right amount of front end to get into the corner, and the rear was just super compliant and would never step out on me. And had that all weekend. That's one of the hardest tracks we go to all year. A lot of people say, I mean, everyone has their own tracks that they find difficult, but you got to brake on the limit, and there's walls everywhere. It's not a lot of room for error. But actually that weekend I didn't miss one braking zone. I was all weekend just cruising behind the just feeling really, really good and confident behind the wheel. And just because I had that car in 2017, it was just braking really well, had a great balance through the corner, and I was just happy. And that one race, I got into an incredible rhythm for 20 laps, where my engineer was just saying, we need green sectors for the next 22 laps to stay ahead of the two Mercs and the Fries if we're going to finish on the podium.
Yep.
And I just immediately, I was like, okay, like we can do this, like fine. And
Yep.
I literally just delivered like for 22 laps, like green sector after green sector after green sector after like every single lap was just getting faster and faster and better by like, you know, just a couple hundredths, but still. Yep. And that was definitely an experience where I won with the car. And, you know, I remember actually with one lap to go, and I think I probably would have never recovered from that day if it would have happened. But with one lap to go, I actually became like aware and conscious of the situation that I was running second and that I actually like had a possibility of scoring a podium. And that same lap, I suddenly started to like analyze the situation a bit. And it was the third corner, so the left-hander in Baku. I turned it a bit earlier and I touched the inside wall with the front left. And it just went doink. And I was like, oh fuck. For a second, I thought I just rode off the fucking front left and I was gonna have to park the car with one lap to go.
Yeah.
And it would have just been like, but you know what? Like, you know, that it could have happened. It could have easily. Another experience I had of that was Vegas 2012. And it was in junior. I won the race and George Russell got me off the line. I was starting second. He got me off the line. I fell back to like fourth. And then I climbed through the field. I passed him, and I always had a tendency to look back when I was racing, like go-karting. And I had a lot of people always tell me, like, you look back so much, like, stop trying to do that, you know? And I was like, yeah, but I only do it once a lap. Like, doesn't matter, you know, leave me alone. And that one race, I remember just like going from fourth straight through the field, passing George, pulling away from George, winning the race. And I never looked back once. And it was just one corner after the next, like bang, bang, bang. And yeah, it's an incredible flow state for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's what I'm always chasing, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you, I mean, you're still so young, like to ask you about the end of the career seems kind of silly right now, but do you, like, are you going to race until you're no longer competitive?
I'm going to race until I no longer want to race.
Okay.
I mean,
good answer.
I think it's, you know, you're always going to go through stages of your career where you're competitive and then you're not competitive.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of what we do. I mean, I've gone through Formula One, you know, years being not competitive and poor car and no confidence. And, you know, just because of that, I wouldn't stop. I think you always got to look at the big picture, but definitely, like, you know, I'm in it for a while because it's what I love to do. And yeah, I mean, definitely don't want to be doing anything else right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I meant by that, sorry, is more like become less competitive because of age. You know, say you get to a certain state, right, and inevitably, statistically speaking, everyone falls off at whatever it is, you know, call it 40 something. When that happens, do you think you'll go race like sports cars, like endurance racing? Do you have designs to go do stuff like that? Do you have any desire, like, it seems silly right now because you're 100% focused on Formula One, obviously, but like, do you look left and right and look at different series that you like?
I mean, I definitely, like, you know, my eyes are open to it. I love racing. So, you know, I look at Le Mans, I look at, I did Daytona a couple of times, with my buddies. It was actually a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, for sure, like, you know, there's definitely races out there. You know, Bathurst is one of, I think, the coolest tracks in the world. They do a GT race there. Yeah, there's tons of cool races for sure. Maybe in the future. I don't know.
Le Mans, dude.
Hasn't really crossed my mind, like, you know, right now, but for sure there's tons of cool races out there, man. Tons. But nowadays, man, guys are saying, you know, like, that's it. You know, you say, like, when you fall off a cliff, you know, but fuck, man, like Alonso, you know, he's still going. He's like 43 or whatever, and he's still, you know, I think if you just stay like mentally healthy and physically healthy, and, you know, just kind of keep yourself young, you can keep going in sports now, man. You know, like, go for a long time.
Yeah, man, get those stem cells everywhere.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
As long as if I keep heading out to Revy every winter, man, that keeps me young.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You just can't hit any trees or have to pull your sled out too many times. That's how you hurt your back.
I do that quite a bit. The sled thing, I do that quite a bit.
Yeah.
You said you're a little bit of a car guy. Like, so I don't know if you know, like my family business, like my dad, since he was young, has a collector car dealership, and that's what we do. And since I was young, it's, you know, anytime anyone asks in the shop who's got like the coolest car collection in the world, it's like, well, in Canada for sure it's Stroll, was always the answer out of my dad's mouth. And you said Le Mans there, like you've got a Cobra, is that right?
Yeah, I have a Cobra.
Yeah, it's a comp car.
Yeah, it's a comp. It's 429.
Yeah, no, that like it's, my brother is arguably at least one of the world's leading like Shelby historians.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Wow.
sure. So
Like he could tell you every serial number of the GT40s that lined up at Le Mans for which year, which comp cars are what, like all that stuff. Like we got to connect out in Revy. You guys
would talk for
Oh,
hours
sweet.
about
Yeah,
Shelby
for
stuff.
sure. Well, next winter when we're out there, man. Yeah, we're gonna connect for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think man, my favorite car from Le Mans, like I always look at that DBR1 that Shelby won in. Do you have any desire to
The DBR,
collect...
the DBR1, is that the Aston Martin? The
the 59.
Yeah,
59.
that's a beautiful car, man. That is a beautiful car.
Yeah, when Shelby won Le Mans in that. Do you have any desires to start collecting Astons now that you're a driver?
Well, I think that's kind of like what's happening now. I mean, I think my dad's kind of sold a few cars and he's starting to get into Aston a bit more. And, yeah, I mean, collect a lot of Ferraris over the years, but I think starting to sell a few of those and collect some Astons. But, you know, I've actually never like, I appreciate, historical cars. I love driving, like I love like driving the Shelby and, some of the older cars, because I think they have like great character on the road, and they're just a joy to drive at like at a slow speed. You can still enjoy it. But like now, all the like modern kind of like supercars and all that stuff, like I don't actually see the point of like driving those things on the road, because like you can only go the speed limit, and like it's just, I mean, yeah, I'm not into cars in that sense. I think I'm more into some of the classic cars, the older cars, because they're fun to drive. They got great character. But some of the modern things, like it's just you can't step on it and really enjoy them.
Yeah.
But,
so
are you more of, so you're more of like looking at older cars, like, I appreciate the history, I appreciate the art and all that stuff, because I mean, you're not going to get a thrill from driving anything.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I honestly, I'm more into, I do what I do for, and this is, I don't want it not to sound in the wrong way, but I do what I do because I love the craft of driving, not because I love cars.
Yes, I agree. Yep.
And that's why I race. You know what I mean? I can't tell you, I can't go out on the street and point out every single car on the road and tell you what the car it is. Like, I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible at that. I don't know anything about cars. But I like the older cars because, again, it's when you get behind the wheel, you feel something special. And that's the same feeling, when you put a good, lap together behind any car. It can be you get an incredible thrill behind a Formula One car. It gets your heart pumping beyond any other, form of racing. That's for sure. Nothing comes close to it, but you can drive, a Formula Ford car with no, aerodynamics and what, it's just like, groove tires. I don't even know what they drive with. Put a good lap together and it feels incredible and it feels amazing. So in that sense, like I'm a racer, just like everyone else, and it doesn't matter what you drive. It's just fun to, to go through the craft and just enjoy being behind the wheel.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because that's my exact answer anytime anyone asks me, because like obviously like we're in the shop right now, like I grew up around this killer car collection like you, and it's like, what's your favorite car? Well, whatever I'm racing this weekend. Like I just love to race. I don't care if it was lawnmowers. I love racing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's
That
like,
I mean, that's the thing. Like, with Formula One, like people always tell me, they're like, how incredible is it racing Formula One? And I don't want to sound like I mean, like, shitty by saying this, but like I tell them all the time, like sometimes like it's the worst fucking piece of shit to drive ever, because when the tires aren't working and the fucking thing has no fucking rear grip and the balance is all over the place and nothing's it is torture to drive,
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, it's like I remember some years, man. It's like Williams in 2018. It was a brutal car to drive. It had so much entry and stability, like there was just no rear support, and then the mid corner just like a ton of understeer. And so you turn in and you'd always have like a snap on entry, and
Yep.
then like mid corner understeer, and like trust me, you go to Suzuka with that balance, and you got to
Yeah.
commit to those corners, and it's like, no thanks, it's not fun to drive. Honestly, the most fun, I think the most fun cars I've driven over the years. I mean, Formula One cars are fun to drive because aerodynamically, like in 2020, we had a great car and there was tons of downforce, and it was unbelievable to drive around places like Silverstone and Mugello with high speed corners. It was great, but problem with Formula One cars now is they're so heavy that like you just don't get that feeling anymore of like a light, nimble machine that has great change of direction and all that. So I would definitely say like the most fun I've had driving cars is in Formula 3, because they weigh 500 kilos. They don't have a lot of power, but power is not actually always what you want or care about. It's like it's how the thing feels, and how it drives. And those cars, like I said, brake so late, deep, and they would rotate so well, change the direction was so good, and they were just a joy to drive, those cars.
What do you think about driving shifter carts as kind of training for Formula One? Like I get in a shifter cart and it's like that's the fastest thing I'll ever drive as far as the feeling it gives me. What do you think about that? Do you do that at all? Like I know some guys do.
Yeah, no, for I think like for like to keep you in shape, like physically, it'll definitely it'll do the job. Because like I was in a shifter a couple of years ago and I was out of breath after 15 laps and my hands were bleeding.
Yeah.
I think as long as you don't break any ribs, it's great. That's been my last two experiencing carts was like half a day and then broken ribs, so close to it.
Shit.
Yeah, no, so I love karting. I mean, it's fun, and I guess I've become soft over the years racing Formula cars. But yeah. But no, enough. I think it's great training. I mean, listen, they're super fast, like mentally, cognitively, like they definitely like, I think put you to the test. And I think it's great. It's great physical training, but I think still, it's a kart. And I think that the thing with karting and with driving, Formula cars, it's very different, because karting, the driving style in karting, I think is very digital. I think it's very, you brake late, hard, you slide, you throw it in, and it kind of accepts all of those things. Like karting accepts like an aggressive driving style. I don't want to say always, because you can be smooth in a kart as well, but it's a different driving style, I should say, to Formula car racing. And I think that there's still that kind of like element of, there's still that separation between like karts and cars. I think it's always a little bit different driving, for me anyways, driving a kart and a kart. But some guys would disagree with me. I mean, I know a lot of the guys in F1, they go out and drive shifters every week because they love it, and it's great training, and it keeps them going behind the wheel. And yeah, I mean, they're a lot of fun. They're really they're quick, man, those things on
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely fast.
How do you think Kimmy's gonna do in NASCAR?
Man, I saw that. I saw he's
Yeah.
he's going over there, huh?
Yeah, he's going cup racing.
I think he's gonna. I mean, I don't know. Has he ever done any NASCAR before?
Yeah,
he did
I think he
something,
did.
right?
Yeah.
He did something.
I think he did a little Xfinity stuff. Like, I always look at it like, man, I don't care who you are. If you change disciplines and go hop in another series.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing, man. It's like it's such a different discipline that, like, you could be Ayrton Senna and go do that, but they've been driving around, on ovals since they're 5 years old, and they did the stock car. I'm saying it wrong, maybe, but the go-karts on dirt and all that stuff. Yeah. So I think, like, that's just like a whole other world, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen guys, I mean, go over there in the past, some drivers, and it's always been like just tough and different. And
Yeah.
No, I don't think it does you any favors to do that while you're kind of in the peak of your career, maybe at the end.
But maybe the Iceman's gonna show him what's up. That's it.
That would be cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I got a fun question for people who are outside or like the average kind of Saturday night racer. How often do you put on a new set of gloves?
Like a new set of gloves?
Yeah. Actually, I hate putting on new gloves, man. Okay. I only put them on because the team complains that they're fucking black after 3 races, and they gotta change it up. But I put on a new pair every other weekend normally.
Okay.
Like, depends if they're like gross and done after one weekend, then I'll go for a new pair. But I don't know, they're always like stiff, and that's it. I'm just like, I'm a man I'm loyal to my equipment. That's it. I keep the same boots, the same gloves as long as I can, especially when it works. You have a little bit superstitious in that sense. I was more back in the day, like, podium, same boots, keeping those boots for 2 years.
Yeah. No, I just like the feel.
It. Don't change it if it ain't broke.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was hoping you'd say like every session, like I wanted to shock people. Like I know, like you hear about like NHL guys getting new gloves like every shift,
stuff like that.
No, I'm not like that. The helmet, I think we get like a new one almost every other race or something.
Yeah.
But that's like Formula One like rules now. I think you're only allowed to do like 2 races, and then you have to change because of safety and all that. But
true. Wow. What do you do with all your old helmets?
You guys auction them off or something?
Man. I auctioned some of them off. Yeah, I auctioned one off last year to the Montreal Children's Hospital.
Nice.
Which is cool. And then I did some other little auctions, and then I got them up here, man. Show you. Hold on. How do I turn this on? Just do up there.
Oh, right on.
Up in the bar.
Up in the bar.
Yeah.
Up in the bar. That's it.
That's good. Are you guys, or I assume it's different. Speaking of Kimmy, I assume it's different for every driver. Do you guys, like in your off season, you kind of get a little bit of an off season, you can go out and party and stuff, but during the race season, are you pretty strict with like no drinking, no bad eating, or is it like kind of give and take a little bit?
I mean, I think everything in moderation, Sunday night after a good result, I'm out drinking.
Yeah.
I would say I'm not shy to say it. I think the season's so long, man. Like, you have to find that balance where it's like you can have a bit of fun after the race and, enjoy a cheeseburger every a few nights a week or once a week, and I don't know, a few drinks on Sunday after the race. And I think it's like, you got to live too, man.
Yeah,
that's it. Like the season now too, like there's so many races, it's so long. I was very much like that in F3 because we had 10 weekends. And I remember like for that season, it was like, I was just like completely dedicated, like no alcohol, no bad food, perfect training all the time, but I was a bit of a robot. Like I
Yep.
was definitely, and I was told to do that by people around me, and I didn't necessarily know what worked for me because I was very young, you know. So I
Yep.
think over the years, you know, like any athlete, you start to know like what you actually need to do well at what you do. And I've realized that, like, you know, for me, it's especially if like you do this for a long time, many years, you know, consistently, it's balance, man. Like you got to go out and enjoy good times with your friends. You have to go out and enjoy good races. Like I love celebrating, you know, with friends and going out and having, you know, dinner and having a few drinks after a great race. Otherwise, like what's the point? Like what are you doing it for? You know, like if you go out and, you know, in what I do, if I go out and finish on the podium and I go to home, I go to bed at 10:30 that night, and, you know, drinking ginger ale, like, well, like what am I doing? You know, like, life's too short, man. Life's too short.
No, that's a good answer. I agree. Otherwise, like you're just saving it up to, like, I don't know, reminisce when you're old. But yeah, you got to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Do you have any like me and my buddies, we talk about this idea, and I don't know if it'll, like, if anyone has ever built it and be like a super wealthy guy, like a super villain or superhero type idea of this reset facility where you get, like, you know, prick of your finger, perfect blood readout. They say, okay, you need to go sauna for 20 minutes, cold tub here, cryogenics here, stem cells here, straight to the osteopath, then massage, align yourself. Do you have, I mean, like any of those things kind of going on throughout your season? Like, are you guys in the cold tub, sauna, you know, physio, stuff like that?
Yeah, I do have all that stuff, but I don't live for it. I'll explain. So, like, I mean, I have a physio that I work with, you know, I live in London, and I have someone here that I see, like, between the races. You know, it's always like a bit of back pain or hip pain or whatever from the car. And, you know, I have a nutritionist, and, you know, I have, you know, a guy that I speak to for sleep, for jet lag and all these things. And I think it's very important. I think it's very important to be physically fit and, you know, mentally healthy. But some days, you know, you're just stressed, like with what I'm speaking, like whatever you might do in life, you know, whatever work it might be, you know, a lawyer, you can be a race car driver, be a doctor, you might be stressed, might have life problems at home, you know, whatever it might be. And, you know, those things aren't always perfect. Your sleep's not always perfect. Your nutrition's not always perfect. Your body's sometimes in pain and all that. And that's, you know, and so coming back to my point, Hungary 2020, I got up Saturday morning and I slept that night because I had stuff going on, whatever, in my life. And I slept like shit, and long story. Anyways, that night I slept 30 minutes. Okay. I slept 30 minutes. I felt worse than I ever felt, like, going into a race car, like, ever. I was fucking all fucked up. I got in the car for FP3. I was, you know, it was like, okay, I'm like, let's do this, you know. Get in the car for qualifying. Adrenaline kicks in. I feel good. I splash some cold water in my face. I do a warm up. I'm religious with my warm up. I really believe in, like, doesn't matter how you wake up in the morning. Like, especially, I think maybe as you get older that changes. But at my age, you can have a terrible night's sleep. You can have a great night's sleep. If you wake up in the morning, you do 30 minutes, like, go for a run or do some, like, you know, some push-ups and just, like, get the body going. Like, you'll feel better after that. So I did my warm up. I did all that stuff. I got in the car. I qualified third. It was a great lap. One of the better laps I've done in Formula One. The car was working really, really well. Qualified third behind the two Mercs. And after that day, it was like, it was a big, like, it was a big shock to me. Like, I realized, like, it's important to do all these things, to try and get these things right as a professional athlete. Like, try and sleep well, try and eat well, try and train well, but, like, it's not everything, you know. You can't obsess about that more than, like, just getting in the car and driving your best and enjoying what you do. Because I think a lot of people in sports, and I think it's racing, it's outside of racing, I think they focus so much on like trying to tick every box of training and nutrition and this and that, and then like you don't actually enjoy what you do so much all the time. Some people love doing that, and it's like that's actually what they love more than their sport, and that's great because it's like a hobby for them.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm one of those people where it's like, it's back to what you said, it's like everything's a balance, everything's in moderation. I love doing that stuff. Like I love speaking to the best trainers and working with the best nutritionists and physios because I like to feel good, and it's something that I'm fortunate enough to like have access to these people and do those things, which is great. But I don't do it for racing necessarily, because I realize like I think racing, like our sport, it's a lot more about being like technically good in your driving, how you drive the car, how you set up the car, how you work with the engineers, the craft of what we do. It's much more important being good at that than being like the fittest guy in the world. And you know what I mean? Like, I just like, I've always found that. And for a long time, I had people like around me pushing me to be the best version of myself in all these other ways. But I've realized like, actually, like, you got to just like drive the car really well and do all these things well as well, of course. But it's not all these things in front of racing is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And I think for a lot of people, like, all these guys go like you would just feel like an idiot if you went out and trained like that and and then Tony Stewart just finishes his cheeseburger and just laps you.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's the thing. It's like it's one of those things. It's funny, man. It's working hard is always great, and I support it. And I think like you have to work hard if you want to be successful in anything you do in life. But I think you also have to be your own best friend while you're working hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's like super important too.
Yeah, you can't be a tyrant over yourself.
No.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
No, I think we got that idea. We hatched that idea of the reset facility sitting in the community center in Revy in the sauna there just after like our legs are burning, everyone's stretching in there. I'm like, this is not a bad little, you pay $6 and it's kind of like a reset facility.
Yeah.
That's good, man. Well, we're almost out of time here. I really appreciate you coming on. This is great.
Yeah,
like
for sure, man. I really enjoyed it. For sure.
Next time you're in Toronto, you've got to bring your dad out to the shop. Like we've got some cool stuff sitting right outside here. We've got the prototype 427 Comp Cobra, like one of one, just sitting right out here. My brother just finished the restoration on it, and a couple GT40s, and
I'll give you a tour.
Very cool. Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. When I'm in the area, I'll come back.
And we'll do a podcast in person. They're always so much better in person.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, look forward to it. For sure.
Yeah.
But tell the people where they can find you. Social media, website, whatever. You have a YouTube channel or anything cool like that?
I don't have a YouTube. I'm terrible with all the technology stuff, man. I'm
focus on driving.
That's it. But no, it's been great, man. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, good. Well, know that like so many Canadians are cheering for you, man. Everyone wants you to do well.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks for making the time, man. Awesome.
So that's the episode with Lance. It was great to pick his brain on his approach to driving at the highest level in the world. Such a romantic idea of just getting in the car, being free, present, and happy, and just dealing with the reality of the situation out on the track. So if you guys enjoyed this podcast, share it with some friends. Stay tuned. We've got another good one coming up next week.